The voicemail that changed everything. I still remember the exact moment my phone buzzed at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. I should have ignored it. I should have rolled over and gone back to sleep like any normal person would. But something about that notification felt different, felt wrong. When I picked up my phone and saw I had a voicemail from my own number, my blood ran cold. Because here's the thing, I was holding my phone, so who the hell was calling me from it? Let me back up a little. My name is Alex, and I'm a software developer living alone in a modest apartment in Portland. I've always been a light sleeper, which is both a blessing and a curse. That particular night, I'd gone to bed around midnight after finishing up some freelance work. My apartment was quiet, too quiet actually. The kind of silence that feels thick, almost oppressive. I remember pulling my weighted blanket up to my chin and scrolling through Reddit for a few minutes before my eyes finally got heavy. The notification sound that woke me wasn't my usual ringtone. It was the default voicemail chime, that sterile electronic beep that phone companies program into every device. My room was dark except for the blue light emanating from my phone screen. I squinted at it, my brain still fuzzy with sleep, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. Voicemail from me, time 3:47 a.m., duration 4:23. My heart started hammering in my chest. I sat up in bed, fully awake now, and stared at my phone like it was a venomous snake. The logical part of my brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a glitch. Maybe someone had spoofed my number. Maybe I was still dreaming. But my hands were shaking as I unlocked my phone and navigated to my voicemail inbox. The message was there waiting. I could see the timestamp, the duration, everything. 4 minutes and 23 seconds of what? I pressed play and held the phone to my ear, my breath catching in my throat. At first there was nothing, just static, that white noise hiss that sounds like the ocean if you're being poetic, or like pure emptiness if you're being honest. I was about to hang up when I heard it, breathing, slow, deliberate, almost mechanical breathing. In and out, in and out. The rhythm was just slightly off, like whoever or whatever was breathing wasn't quite getting it right. Then came my voice. "Alex," it said, and I nearly dropped the phone. It was my voice, my exact voice, but the inflection was wrong. It was flat, emotionless, like someone had taken a recording of me and stripped all the humanity out of it. "Alex, you need to listen very carefully." I yanked the phone away from my ear and stared at it, my pulse racing so fast I could feel it in my temples. This wasn't possible. This couldn't be happening. But the voicemail kept playing, and I could hear my own voice continuing to speak, tinny and distant through the phone's speaker. "I don't have much time," my voice said. "It's already started, you need to check the corner." I sat there in my bed for what felt like hours, but was probably only a few minutes, trying to process what I just heard. Check the corner? What corner? My bedroom had 4 corners, and I scanned each one frantically, my eyes adjusting to the darkness. Nothing. Just the usual furniture, the pile of laundry I'd been meaning to fold, the stack of books on my nightstand. But something felt different about the room. Have you ever had that feeling where a space you know intimately suddenly seems foreign? Like the walls are the wrong distance apart, or the shadows fall in ways they shouldn't? That's how my bedroom felt in that moment. I got out of bed, my feet hitting the cold hardwood floor, and walked to the light switch. The overhead light flickered on, harsh and bright. I blinked against it and looked around more carefully. Everything was where it should be. My laptop on the desk, my clothes in the closet, my shoes by the door. I checked my phone again, confirming that yes, the voicemail was real, yes, it was still there in my inbox. I played it again, this time on speaker. "I don't have much time, it's already started, you need to check the corner." And then something new, something I hadn't caught the first time because I'd pulled the phone away from my ear. After the main message there was a sound. It was faint, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A scraping sound like something being dragged across a floor. And beneath that, so quiet I had to strain to hear it, was what sounded like whispering. Multiple voices, overlapping, speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The voicemail ended with a click and my bedroom was silent again, too silent. I decided to do what any rational person would do in this situation. I Googled it. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and typed "receive voicemail" from my own number into the search bar. The results were not comforting. Forums full of people describing similar experiences. Some claimed it was a scam, an elaborate phishing attempt. Others insisted it was something paranormal. One person wrote in all caps, "Whatever you do, don't call the number back." I had no intention of calling myself back, but I couldn't shake the message. Check the corner. I looked at all four corners of my room again, more methodically this time. I pulled furniture away from walls. I checked behind my bookshelf. I even looked up at the corners where the walls met the ceiling, searching for what I didn't know. That's when I noticed it. In the far corner of my room near my closet, there was a small discoloration on the wall that I'd never seen before. It was subtle, just a slight difference in the paint color, like someone had patched a hole in used paint that was a shade or two off. I walked over to it, my heart pounding again, and ran my fingers across the surface. The wall was warm, not just room temperature warm, but actively warm, like there was heat coming from inside it. I pressed my palm against it, and I swear I could feel something. A vibration, maybe? A pulse? It was so faint I couldn't be sure if it was real or if my mind was playing tricks on me. I grabbed a screwdriver from my kitchen, one of those cheap multi-tool sets you get from IKEA, and came back to the corner. My hands were shaking as I positioned the flat head against the edge of the discolored patch. Was I really about to start destroying my rental apartment because of a creepy voicemail? Apparently, yes. Yes, I was. The drywall gave way easily, too easily, like it had been cut and replaced recently. Chunks of it crumbled onto my floor as I pried at the edges, revealing a small hollow space in the wall. I used my phone's flashlight to peer inside, and my breath caught in my throat. There was something in there. A phone. An old flip phone, the kind nobody uses anymore, sitting in the hollow space like it had been waiting for me. It was still on, the screen glowing faintly in the darkness of the wall cavity. And as I stared at it, watching dust motes dance in my phone's LED light, the flip phone began to ring. The ringtone was cheerful, absurdly so, some generic melody that felt completely at odds with the situation. I reached in with trembling fingers and pulled the phone out. It was coated in a fine layer of dust, and there was something else, something sticky on the back of it that I didn't want to identify. The phone continued to ring in my hand, vibrating against my palm. I shouldn't have answered it. Every instinct I had was screaming at me not to answer it. But I did. I flipped it open and held it to my ear, saying nothing, just listening. Alex, that same flat, emotionless version of my voice, but this time it wasn't coming from a voicemail, it was live, real time. "You found the first one, there are 6 more, you have until sunrise." "Who is this?" I managed to choke out. "What do you want?" "I'm you," the voice said, and I could hear something that might have been amusement in the tone. "Or I will be. Time is complicated. The corners, Alex, check all the corners. If you don't find them before sunrise, you'll understand why I'm calling. You'll become me." The line went dead. I stood there in my bedroom, holding a dusty flip phone I just pulled out of my wall, staring at my own phone sitting on my desk. The clock on my laptop read 4:23 a.m. Sunrise in Portland in March was around 6:30 a.m. That gave me just over 2 hours. 2 hours to find 6 more phones hidden in corners. But corners of what? My apartment, my building, the entire city. I decided to start with my apartment. It was the most logical place, and I was hoping, praying, really, that I wouldn't have to venture outside in the dead of night searching for hidden phones based on cryptic instructions from myself, from the future, or whatever that was. My apartment wasn't large. A 1-bedroom with an open kitchen and living room, a bathroom, and a small storage closet. I started systematically checking every corner I could find, running my hands along the walls looking for more discolorations or warm spots. The living room yielded nothing. The kitchen was clean. I was beginning to think maybe the voice had been lying or I was losing my mind when I checked the bathroom. The corner behind the toilet where the wall met the floor felt wrong. The baseboard was slightly separated from the wall, like someone had pried it loose and then tried to push it back into place. I got down on my hands and knees, not caring about how disgusting my bathroom floor probably was, and pulled at the baseboard. It came away easily, and there, in the space behind it, was another phone. This one was more modern, a smartphone from maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It was also on the screen showing a single notification, "Play me." I picked it up with shaking hands and tapped the notification. A video began to play. It was security camera footage, black and white, grainy. It took me a moment to recognize the location. It was the lobby of my apartment building. I could see the front door, the mailboxes, the bulletin board where people posted flyers for lost cats and yoga classes. The timestamp on the footage said it was from tonight, 2:17 a.m. I watched as the front door opened and a figure entered. They were wearing a hoodie, face obscured, but something about the way they moved was familiar. They walked directly to the mailboxes, opened one, my mailbox, I realized, and placed something inside. Then they turned and looked directly at the camera. Even with the hood up, even with the grainy footage, I could see the face. It was my face, but the expression was wrong. The eyes were too wide, the smile too stretched, like someone wearing a mask of my face but not quite getting the proportions right. The figure in the video raised one hand and pointed directly at the camera. At me. Then the video cut to black. The phone in my hand buzzed with a new notification. A text message from no number that read, "Storage closet, top shelf, behind the winter coats. Hurry, Alex, you're running out of time." I ran to the storage closet, nearly tripping over my own feet in my haste. The clock was ticking, 4:47 a.m. now, less than 2 hours until sunrise. I yanked open the closet door and pulled at the winter coats I'd shoved up on the top shelf, the ones I never used because Portland winters weren't that cold. My fingers brushed against something hard and plastic, and I pulled down another phone. This one powered on the moment I touched it, like it had been waiting for my fingerprint, my warmth. The screen showed a map. My apartment building was marked with a red dot, and there were 5 more dots scattered across the city. 5 more phones, 5 more corners. But here's what made my blood turn to ice. One of the dots was moving. It was heading toward my building, getting closer with each passing second. I watched it progress down streets I recognized, taking turns that would lead it straight to my front door. The ETA displayed at the bottom of the screen, 12 minutes. I looked at the other phones I'd found laid out on my coffee table like evidence in a crime scene. 3 phones found, 6 more to go according to the voicemail. But this map only showed 5 more locations, which meant... My own phone rang, my actual phone. I grabbed it and looked at the caller ID, me. I answered it this time without hesitation. "You're starting to understand," my voice said. "The phones are anchors. Each one is a point in time where you made a choice, where you could have split off into a different version of yourself. I've been collecting them, Alex. Every wrong decision, every path not taken, and tonight they all converge." "I don't understand," I said, hating how my voice shook. "What happens at sunrise?" "You become coherent," the voice said. "All the versions collapse into one, but only one version survives coherently. The others, they fade, they become echoes, ghosts in their own lives. I'm trying to help you, Alex. I'm trying to make sure you're the version that remains real." "How do I know you're really me?" I asked. "How do I know this isn't some elaborate prank or—" "The scar on your left knee from when you were 7, the voice interrupted. "You told everyone you got it from falling off your bike, but that's not true. You got it from the broken glass at the abandoned house you and Marcus explored. You never told anyone because you weren't supposed to be there. The recurring dream about drowning in a room full of mirrors. The fact that you count to 7 whenever you're anxious. Should I go on?" I couldn't speak. Those were things no one knew, things I'd never told anyone. "The moving dot on the map is another version of you," my voice continued. One that didn't get the warning, didn't find the phones in time. He's coming to take your place. You need to get the other phones before he arrives, or you need to stop him. Those are your only options. 11 minutes now. I looked at the map again. 5 locations, 11 minutes, and one of me closing in fast. There was no way I could get to all 5 locations, but maybe I didn't have to. Maybe I just needed to get to the closest one and figure out what these phones really were, what they really did. The nearest dot was 3 blocks away, a 24-hour convenience store on the corner of Marshall and 14th. I could run there in under 5 minutes if I pushed it. I grabbed my keys, threw on shoes without bothering to tie them, and ran out of my apartment. The hallway was empty, fluorescent lights humming overhead. I hit the stairwell and took the steps 2 at a time, my footsteps echoing in the concrete space. When I burst out into the lobby, I half expected to see the hooded figure from the security footage waiting for me. But there was no one, just the empty lobby, the bulletin board, the mailboxes. I hesitated for a second, then ran to my mailbox and opened it. Inside was a small package wrapped in brown paper. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely tear it open. Inside was a key, old brass, the kind that might open a door from decades ago, and a note in handwriting that looked almost like mine but just slightly off. The store corner booth under the table, you'll know what to do. I shoved the key in my pocket and ran out into the night. The streets were empty, lit by the orange glow of streetlights. My breath came in ragged gasps as I sprinted down the sidewalk, my untied shoes slapping against the pavement. I kept checking over my shoulder, expecting to see, what, myself, a hooded figure, something worse. The convenience store appeared ahead, its neon sign buzzing and flickering. Open 24 hours, it proclaimed, though the place looked deserted. I slowed to a walk as I approached, trying to catch my breath, trying to look normal. Through the window, I could see a bored-looking clerk behind the counter scrolling through their phone. I pushed open the door and a bell chimed. The clerk glanced up, nodded, and went back to their phone. I looked around frantically. Corner booth, but this was a convenience store, not a restaurant. There were no booths. Then I saw it. In the back corner near the refrigerated section, someone had set up a small seating area, probably for people to eat their microwaved burritos or whatever. There was a single table with attached bench seats. A booth. I walked toward it, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I dropped to my knees and looked under the table. Taped to the underside was another phone, and next to it, scratched into the metal support of the table, were words, "Last chance." I peeled the phone away from the table and stood up. The clerk was watching me now, a curious expression on their face. I gave them what I hoped was a reassuring smile and walked quickly toward the exit. As soon as I was outside, I powered on the phone. The screen lit up with a countdown timer, 6 minutes 23 seconds. Beneath it, a message, "He's almost there, listen to this before he arrives." I pressed play on an audio file, and my own voice filled my ears through the phone's speaker. "Alex, if you're hearing this, you found the phone at the store. Good, that means you still have a chance. I need you to listen carefully because what I'm about to tell you is going to sound insane, but it's the truth. 3 months ago, you were in an accident. You don't remember it because the version of you that experienced it isn't the version of you that continued. You split, we split. Every major decision creates a branch, and usually they stay separate. But something went wrong with our accident. The branches started bleeding into each other, collapsing. There are 9 versions of you right now, all existing simultaneously in this timeline, all heading toward the same convergence point, sunrise today. I'm the version from 3 splits ahead. I found a way to stay coherent to remain the primary version, but it requires sacrifice. The other versions have to be absorbed. Their choices, their memories, their experiences, they all get folded into the primary version. That's what the phones are. They're anchor points. Each one contains a fragment of consciousness from a different version of you. If you collect them all before the other versions do, you become the primary. You get to continue. The others fade. But here's the thing they don't tell you: you'll remember it all. Every version, every choice, every path not taken. You'll carry all of it. And it will drive you mad unless you're strong enough to handle it. I don't know if you are, I don't know if I was. I'm recording this message, but I'm not sure if I'm really me anymore or if I'm just an amalgamation of all the me's that came before. The version heading to your apartment now, he's from a split where we made a different choice tonight. He didn't get the warning. He doesn't know about the phones, but he will fight to survive, Alex. He will do anything to remain real. You need to decide, do you let him take your place or do you fight? The message ended. I stood there on the sidewalk, the phone clutched in my hand, and checked the time on my own phone, 5:19 a.m. Then I looked at the map. The moving dot had reached my building. I ran faster than I'd ever run in my life, my lungs burning, my legs screaming. I had to get back to my apartment. I had to, fight myself, confront a different version of me. The absurdity of it all would have been funny if I wasn't so terrified. I burst through the lobby door and nearly collided with someone coming down the stairs. We both froze, staring at each other. It was me, or rather it was a version of me. He looked exactly like me, but his eyes were different. There was a desperation in them, a wildness that I'd never seen in my own reflection. He was wearing the same clothes I'd thrown on, jeans and an old t-shirt, but his shoes were tied. Such a small detail, but it stood out. "You got the message," he said, and his voice was my voice, but steadier somehow, more certain. "Who are you?" I asked, even though I knew the answer. "I'm you," he said. "From a different split. I didn't find the phones, I didn't get the warning, but I figured it out anyway. There can only be one of us, Alex. The universe is trying to course correct. We're an anomaly." "Then why are we talking?" I asked. "If one of us has to fade, why aren't you trying to stop me?" He smiled, and it was the saddest expression I'd ever seen on my own face. Because I've had time to think about it, about which version deserves to continue. And I realized something: I'm not sure I want to be the one who survives. The things I had to do in my timeline to get here, the choices I made, I don't know if I can live with them. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a phone, another one different from any I'd found. "This is the core," he said, "the original anchor point. The moment when we first split. If you destroy this, all the timelines collapse properly. One version remains, chosen by, I don't know, fate, physics, but it's not a fight, it's more like the universe picking which version makes the most sense." He held the phone out to me. "Take it, finish what I started, collect all the anchors and destroy them at sunrise, let the timeline heal, and whatever version emerges, I hope it's better than either of us." I took the phone from him, our fingers touching for just a moment. There was a strange sensation, like static electricity, and I saw a flash of memories that weren't mine, a different apartment, different friends, different choices. A life that could have been mine but wasn't. "What happens to you?" I asked. "I fade," he said simply. "I become a might have been, a ghost of probability. It's already starting. Can you feel it? The timeline is already choosing." And he was right. As I watched, his form began to flicker, becoming translucent. He looked down at his hands, watched them turn to static and shadow, and smiled. "Good luck, Alex. Make better choices than I did." Then he was gone, dissolved into the air like he'd never existed at all. I stood alone in the lobby, holding 5 phones now, the 4 I'd found and the core anchor he'd given me. According to the map, there were still 4 more locations, but the sun was coming. I could see the sky beginning to lighten through the lobby windows, maybe 45 minutes until sunrise. I could try to get the rest of the phones. I could follow the map, race across the city, collect the remaining anchors. Or I could take what I had and destroy them now, let the universe make its choice with incomplete information. But that's when I noticed something. The core anchor phone he'd given me was displaying a message, 5 more versions remain. They're all converging on your location. They all figured it out. They're all coming. Sunrise in 43 minutes. I looked up at the ceiling at the fluorescent lights humming overhead and I laughed. The sound echoed in the empty lobby, slightly unhinged. Of course they were all coming here. Of course they'd all figured it out. We were all the same person after all. We'd all make the same logical deductions, follow the same patterns of reasoning. The question was, what would we do when we all met? I took the stairs back up to my apartment, moving quickly but no longer running. Whatever was going to happen would happen. I unlocked my door and stepped inside, placing all 5 phones on my coffee table in a neat row. Then I sat down and waited. I didn't have to wait long. There was a knock on my door at 5:47 a.m., then another, and another. I opened it to find 3 more versions of myself standing in the hallway, all of us staring at each other with expressions ranging from fear to resignation to grim determination. "You found the phones," one of them said. He looked older, somehow more tired. "Some of them," I replied. "You." "2," said another version, holding them up, "but I think I know where the rest are." "It doesn't matter," said the tired-looking one. "The timeline is collapsing regardless. Can't you feel it? The anchors are all resonating. They're calling to each other." He was right. The phones on my coffee table had started to hum, a low frequency that I felt more than heard. And the phones the other versions were holding were doing the same thing. "We should talk," I said, stepping aside to let them in. "We don't have much time, but we should at least understand what's happening before the universe decides which one of us gets to be real," finished one of the other me's. "Yeah," I said, "that." We all filed into my small apartment, 4 versions of the same person, and sat around my coffee table looking at the collection of humming, glowing phones. The sky outside was getting lighter by the minute. "I don't want to fade," said one version quietly. "I have things I need to do, people who need me." "We all have people who need us," said another. "Different people maybe, but people nonetheless. How do we decide who stays?" "We don't," I said, the realization hitting me. "That's not our choice. It never was. These phones, the anchors, they're just markers. The timeline is healing itself, choosing the path that makes the most sense causally. All we can do is accept it." "That's easy for you to say," snapped the tired-looking version. "You're the one who got the warning first. You're probably the prime version, the one the timeline will choose." But even as he said it, I knew it wasn't true. I could feel it, a pulling sensation like I was being tugged gently toward somewhere else. Nowhere, maybe. The other versions were feeling it too. I could see it in their eyes, the way they kept flickering in and out of focus. The phones on the table began to pulse with light, their humming growing louder. The sun was rising. I could see the first golden rays breaking over the horizon outside my window. "Whatever happens," I said, looking at each version of myself, "I hope we made the right choices, all of us." They nodded. One of them reached out and took my hand, then another. We sat there in a circle, 4 versions of one person holding hands as the sunrise filled my apartment with golden light. The phones exploded with brilliance, their screens flashing in synchronization. The humming became a roar, and I felt myself being pulled apart and put back together simultaneously. Memories flooded through me, lives I'd lived and hadn't lived, choices I'd made and hadn't made, people I'd loved and lost and never met. It was overwhelming, infinite, too much for one consciousness to hold. And then it was over. I opened my eyes, my singular, continuous, coherent eyes, and I was alone in my apartment. The phones were gone. The other versions were gone. The sun was fully up, streaming through my windows, illuminating ordinary furniture in an ordinary room. I checked my phone. It was 6:43 a.m. on a Tuesday in March. My voicemail inbox was empty. There were no mysterious messages, no strange calls from my own number. It was as if the entire night had never happened. But I remembered it all, every version, every choice, every possibility. I carried their memories now, their experiences. I was a composite of all the paths I could have taken, all the choices I could have made, and it was overwhelming. I stood up on shaking legs and walked to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same, exactly the same, but my eyes were different. There was something in them now, something that knew too much, had seen too much. I'd lived 4 lifetimes in a single night, and I didn't know how to be one person anymore. My phone buzzed, a text from my friend Marcus. "Hey, still on for coffee this afternoon?" I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the keyboard. Such a simple question, such an ordinary moment. But in my composite memory, I had 4 different responses. In one timeline, I'd said yes and met someone at the coffee shop who changed my life. In another, I'd said no and avoided a terrible accident. In another, I'd never received the text at all. Which choice did I make? Which version of me was I now? I started typing, "Yes, see you at." But then I stopped because I noticed something in the reflection of my phone's screen. There in the corner of my bathroom behind me, the wall was starting to glow faintly, warm, pulsing. And I realized with a sinking, terrible certainty, it wasn't over. The timeline hadn't finished healing. There were still more versions out there, still more choices to be collapsed, still more corners to check. My phone rang, the caller ID said me. I answered it. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" my voice asked, and there was something different about it this time, something ancient and tired and infinitely patient. "The convergence was just the beginning, Alex. Now comes the hard part. Now you have to live with being all of us at once. And every time you make a choice, every time you stand at a crossroad, you'll split again. And you'll remember, you'll always remember, all of you will." The line went dead. I stood there in my bathroom, the morning sun streaming through the window, looking at my reflection and the glowing corner behind me, and I understood. I was trapped in a loop of my own existence, splitting and converging infinitely, forever remembering every path I'd taken and hadn't taken. The real horror wasn't the other versions of myself. It wasn't the mysterious phones or the collapsing timelines. It was knowing that this would keep happening over and over every day with every choice. I would spend the rest of my life collecting pieces of myself, trying to stay coherent, trying to remain one person in a reality that kept insisting I was infinite. I walked to the corner and pressed my hand against the warm spot on the wall, already knowing what I would find.